It's a story that still haunts me, even after all these years of working with primates. I remember the moment I saw him, a gorilla infant with fur as white as snow, lying in a small cage. He was different, unnatural, as if defying the laws of nature itself. The truth, when I found it in the files, was even more disturbing. He was one of the first genetically modified gorillas. His name was Kesi. I was working for an animal rights organization back then, investigating a laboratory I'd suspected for months. That night, in 2006, I finally managed to get inside. What I saw shook me to my core. All the other gorillas in the surrounding cages were dark-colored, natural-looking. But this infant was the result of deliberate intervention. Scientists had tampered with his genetics, intending to display him as a rare species, maybe even sell him to some wealthy collector. He was living without a mother, without love, just an experimental object. Something broke in my heart. I made a decision right then. I couldn't leave him there. Risking my career, my freedom, maybe even my life, I took Kesi out of that place. I named him myself Kesi, which means hope in an ancient language. He was hope for me, proof that humanity could still do good, that love was stronger than science. The first days weren't easy. Kesi had been traumatized. He cried through the nights, trembled in my arms. But I didn't give up. I fed him, warmed his milk, sang lullabies for hours, slowly gaining his trust by being there every time he woke up. As months passed, the bond between us grew stronger. As Kesi grew, his white fur shone even brighter. But it wasn't just physical development. His intelligence, his ability to empathize, his loving gaze. It was as if he was now receiving back all the love he had lost in that laboratory cell, multiplied. By the time he turned 3, Kesi was already too big to climb on my shoulder. But he still came to my side every morning, rested his huge head on my knees, waiting for my hands to wander through his fur. That ritual was the most sacred moment for me, because those moments were a time for a silent conversation we both shared. I taught Kesi simple things: how to peel fruit, how to play games, even how to open a simple lock. I had shown him this last skill as a fun activity. A metal lock, small buttons turned in the right sequence. Kesi thought it was a game, but actually, it was one of the most important gifts I had given him, the ability to understand the idea of freedom. Years passed. When Kesi turned 10, he was already over 200 kilos. His white fur literally glowed in the sunlight, while his amber eyes carried deep wisdom. I could no longer keep him at home. It would be dangerous and wrong, but the solution I found was the best for him. The local Rehabilitation center agreed to accept Kesi. This was a professional facility designed for injured animals in need of protection with large areas. Kesi would be safe there, cared for by experts, and able to move freely in a large area. The day I took him there, I felt something tear inside me. Kesi looked at me, and there was an understanding in those big eyes, as if he knew, as if he understood that I thought this was best for him. As I left him, I stroked his head one last time, whispered in his ear one last time, "I will always love you, Kesi. You're my son." And Kesi touched my face one last time. Those giant fingers touched mine as if making a promise that he would never forget me. After that day, I visited him every week. According to the center's rules, I couldn't make direct contact, but just watching him from behind the bars was enough. Every time Kesi saw me, he would stand up, place his hands on the bars, and look at me. It was as if he was speaking, as if saying, "Mom, you're here. Everything is." Time was merciless, especially toward me. When I reached 65, the most painful prison is the one where your mind remains sharp, your feelings deep, but you can't fully express anything. That's what happened to Emma. Her body began to betray her, strength leaving her legs first, then her hands trembling. The diagnosis came, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, what many know as motor neuron disease. Merciless, progressive. Within a year, she couldn't walk, confined to a wheelchair. Three buttons, when turned in a specific sequence, would open it. A simple but effective system designed to prevent visitors from accidentally opening the door. But Kesi remembered. He turned the first button right, the second left, the third right. A click sounded. The lock opened. Sarah gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered. Security guards, noticing the situation on the monitors, panicked. The alarm sounded, but Emma wasn't afraid. She looked into Kesi's eyes, and there was no danger there. Only love. Kesi slowly pushed the door. The metal bars creaked open, and that giant gorilla, for the first time in 10 years, stepped outside freely. Security teams came running, tranquilizer darts in their hands, some with guns. "Get back," someone shouted. "The animal has gotten loose." But Kesi didn't even look at them. He only looked at Emma, and with slow steps, as carefully as if approaching something breakable, he moved toward her. Sarah had frozen behind the chair, unable to move, but Emma tried to signal with her hand. "Let him," she said with difficulty. Sarah hadn't understood. "What?" "Let him." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She didn't want to leave her sister alone with this giant animal. But seeing the determination in Emma's eyes, she slowly backed away. One of the security team members shouted, "No, get away from there. This is very dangerous." I've heard stories of animal behavior that defy explanation, but I never truly understood until I read about Emma and Kesi. When the door closed, Kesi stood there, leaning against the bars, motionless, silent, just watching Emma. Sarah moved behind the wheelchair. "Should we go?" she asked, her voice trembling. Emma nodded slightly. Yes, it was time. I'll never forget the story of Kesi and Emma. How do you tell a gorilla that the person he loved most has died? It's a question that haunted Dr. Thompson, but the truth was, Kesi already knew. That morning, he hadn't come to the bars as usual. He didn't break his morning routine. He just sat in the farthest corner of his area, head bowed, motionless, as if mourning. That farewell between Emma and Kesi, it was real. They both knew it. As the chair began to turn, Kesi made a sound, a long, pain-filled call. The kind gorillas make only in very special situations, a mother's call or a son's call. As they moved toward the center's exit, people around silently made way. Everyone was still under the influence of that moment. Some were crying. Some were just looking in shock because what they had just seen wasn't normal animal behavior. It was a miracle. When they got home, Sarah made tea for Emma, but she couldn't drink it. She felt empty inside, as if a part of her had stayed there with Kesi. When night came, Emma lay in her bed, looked at the ceiling, and thought of the night she first saw Kesi, that tiny white infant, and how she had taken him in her arms. How she had made a promise. I will protect you. I will love you. And she had kept her promise. Every day, every moment, she had done what was best for Kesi. Days passed. Weeks passed. Sarah brought her news of Kesi, said he was doing well. But there was something Sarah didn't say. She didn't say that Kesi came to the bars every evening at sunset and looked at the last place Emma had stood. 2 months later, one morning when Emma woke up, she was having trouble breathing. The disease had progressed. Sarah called the ambulance, but Emma refused. She didn't want to go to the hospital. She wanted to be at home in peace. That night, as she lay in her bed, she looked out the window. The moon was full, white light filtering into the room. And at that moment, a strange feeling overcame her, as if Kesi were beside her, as if that giant hand were touching hers again. She closed her eyes and imagined Kesi, his white fur, his amber eyes, his giant but gentle hands. And she imagined that last day, that perfect day, when cherry blossoms danced in the air, when the sun illuminated everything. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "Thank you for letting me love you, Kesi." And that night, Emma fell asleep in peace. The next morning, Sarah couldn't wake her. Emma was gone, but there was a smile on her face, a peaceful, happy expression, as if she had seen a beautiful dream. When Dr. Thompson received the news, he cried. That woman had not only saved an animal's life, she had given him a life, a loving, meaningful life. Dr. Thompson asked Sarah for Emma's favorite shawl. And one morning, in the early hours, he left that shawl in Kesi's area. When Kesi saw the shawl, he froze. He approached, smelled it, and at that moment his giant body trembled. His hands grasped the shawl, brought it to his face, and smelled it for a long, long time. This was Emma's scent, lavender and daisy. Kesi had never forgotten that scent. He gently pressed the shawl to his chest, bowed his head. From that day on, Kesi slept with that shawl every night. In the morning, he would take it with him, protected it as if it were a treasure. This was Kesi's way of maintaining his connection with Emma. Months passed. Kesi slowly returned to normal. He ate, he played, he lived. But every evening at sunset, he would take that shawl with him and come to the bars. He would sit there, wait, and perhaps in a way, Emma was always there. In every cherry blossom petal, in every ray of sunlight, Emma was in Kesi's heart, just as Kesi was in Emma's heart. A year later, the Rehabilitation Centre erected a special monument in Emma's memory, made of white marble. It was a small but meaningful monument. On it was a figure of a woman and a gorilla hand in hand, and underneath was an Indian. Emma Carter, 1964 to 2026, she taught that love knows no language, species, or barrier. On the day of the monument's unveiling, Sarah was there, and Kesi was there too, from behind the bars, watching silently. When the ceremony ended, Sarah went to Kesi's side, looked at him. Those amber eyes gave Sarah a sad but grateful look. "You love my sister very much, didn't you?" said Sarah with tears. Kesi bowed his head slightly, as if confirming. "She loved you very much too," said Sarah. "Know that." And Kesi at that moment made a strange sound, soft, sweet, sad, one of those rare sounds with which gorillas express their deepest feelings. Years passed. Kesi lived a long and happy life. Grey strands had appeared among his white fur, but that sparkle in his eyes never disappeared, and he carried Emma's shawl with him until he died. One autumn morning, Kesi peacefully passed away. Veterinarians said his heart had stopped, but caretakers said something else. He finally went to be with Emma. They buried Kesi right next to Emma's monument and wrote on it, Kesi, 2006 to 2023. He knew what love was, and he never forgot it. That night, the full moon illuminated both graves. Emma and Kesi, mother and son, two souls, finally together again. And you could see cherry blossom petals dancing in the wind, even though it wasn't the season, as if Emma and Kesi were somehow still showing their love. The thought that they were together. That's what stays with me. It's a small detail, but it changes everything.